Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Noreen Burke and this is the Crafty Organizer. On this channel, I love bringing you ideas to get organized, declutter, do some DIYs, upcycles, and anything crafty. I had just finished working with a client not too long ago who had a lot of issues with their hands. They had fibromyalgia, they had rheumatoid arthritis, and we had to come up with some different ways for them to access and use the things that they had. And it got me to thinking. I read through so many comments where you guys are struggling with various issues. While researching this video, I learned that the term arthritis is more of a generic term having to do with any disease that causes joint inflammation. This includes things like osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, gout, and fibromyalgia, to name a few. It is the most common in the elderly, but because of the way diseases are, it can strike at any age. Depending upon the severity of your disease, it generally causes a lot of pain and inflammation and difficulty with dexterity, but that doesn't mean you have to stop the things that you're doing. So today I'm just going to share a couple of tips I learned to help you still enjoy the activities you like and some tools that you can use to make things easier. Let's get started. We're going to start with sewing and paper crafting because I felt that they were very similar in the cutting of small things and having to work so intricately with a lot of different embellishments that you would add on to it. So one of the first tools I want to talk about are rotary cutters. I love my Fiskars rotary cutter. It's super easy to just pop out, and then there's one button on the side. All you have to do is press that and the cutter pops right back in. So it's really just your thumb that you need to have dexterity with. The grip is very comfortable and you're able to easily navigate around cutting. This works great around templates as well. If you've got the acrylic templates, it makes it really easy to cut around things. Now, if the joint in your thumb is what's causing you issues, there's an alternative. The Olfa cutter is different in that you have to squeeze the grip and it still has a button on the side to retract the blade, but this might be more comfortable for you if you're having issues with your thumb. And something that I read online is that you can interchange the Fiskars rotary blades to fit the Olfa and they're a little bit less expensive. So if you're looking at either one of those, just know the Fiskars blades are the most budget friendly. Another tool I found great reviews on if you're doing a lot of quilting or applique work, quick clips. There's these special little tools that help push down the head of a safety pin so that you can quickly connect it. There's a video I've got linked in the description below of a gal who shows how easy it is to use. But if you're having a lot of joint issues, this is the best tool to keep that repetitive motion at a limit so that you're able to enjoy your craft longer. Moving into knitting and crocheting, this is what my client actually did as her craft. So this is where a lot of my information came from. One of the things that she mentioned is that she got rid of all of her metal needles because they held the cold longer. So while she was knitting, it would cause her fingers to basically stiffen more quickly. This particular client switched all of her metal needles out for wooden, plastic, and bamboo needles. This really helped to keep the aggravation of those cold joints at bay, and she was able to knit much longer than with the metal needles. Another thing that she switched over were the circular needles. What this did is it took the weight off her actual hands and allowed what she was knitting to fall into the circular portion of the needles and rest in her lap. Again, by taking the weight off of where she's actually working, it just made it so much easier for her. The last tip she shared with me is, even though it's a little bit more expensive, she switched all of her yarn skeins to wool. And the reason she did this is that wool is a lot more flexible and elastic, and so it makes it easier to work with. She wasn't having to struggle with it, and it'll contract back later to keep the stitches consistent. I think that's a great tip. Some of these tips that I'm going to be sprinkling throughout are definitely generic for all types of activities. One of them being, make sure you're giving yourself extra time for the projects. If you've got a deadline for making a blanket, for example, you want to make sure to give yourself extra days or weeks so that if you do have some sort of a flare-up, you're not stressing yourself out and forcing yourself to get through a project, which takes the joy out of doing that particular craft. Moving into sculpting and pottery, sculpting with clay and other materials allows you to practice a number of motion skills, which is really good for dexterity, including kneading, rolling, and molding. However, this is also very taxing on your joints and your limbs. There are clays out there that have a higher moisture content, which means they're much softer to work with. The other thing you'll want to do when you're working with clay is alternate hands if possible. If you can be kneading with this hand, take a break, shake it out, work with this hand. This was something my client reiterated many times as we worked together. She had lots of hand exercises that she used. Find out which exercises would be best for you and your ailment, but doing these throughout the time that you're crafting will really extend the amount of time that you're able to craft. Next, we're going to move on to beading and jewelry. If you're doing this type of craft, you know, holding the pliers for a long amount of time gets really painful, even if you don't have arthritis. Something I had to find for my client was an ergonomic pair of pliers. Now, I kept looking, thinking that they were going to be a special handle or a special way to activate the tightness of the grip. It just is the spring that's inside of the plier, which allows you to just squeeze and not have to grip it to open and close. I didn't realize this was something so simple, so if you're looking for ergonomic pliers, it really is as simple as just finding those that are spring activated, and that's a much less expensive thing than buying the actual ergonomic through any type of medicinal website. So keep the cost down, just spring-loaded, should work. Make sure it's a comfortable grip for your hand though. Coloring and drawing is one of those things that brings so much tranquility and calm to you. If you've ever been stressed, whip out a coloring book and start coloring. In about 10 minutes, you'll notice that your stress level comes down so much. However, if you're having a hard time gripping a pencil or it's painful, that obviously lessens the joy that you get out of that. One of the things that you can do is get those grips that you used to find in schools. They have them in different thicknesses and different densities. You can slip that on any one of your pens, markers, or even paint brushes. This will allow you to grip things much more comfortably. Also, whenever possible, try and find something that's a little bit bigger around. Once again, this alleviates the need to really grip something tightly in a small amount of space and allows your hand to relax more as you're holding it. Another thing that's really beneficial and is pretty inexpensive, get some gel pads. These are great regardless of if you're coloring, painting, working again on sewing or paper crafts. It gives you a comfortable place to rest your elbow. And I know I'm already getting a little bit of an issue in this little bone here. It hurts quickly if I rest it on things. The gel wrist pads have been such a saving grace for me when I'm doing something where I'm resting my hand on a table for an extended amount of time. And they're definitely not expensive. This will come up again later, but one of the things I definitely want to address is your posture and what you're sitting in and at. If you're hunched over in a really tiny place, it's obviously going to make it very uncomfortable for you and cause pain and discomfort later. You want to make sure that you're sitting upright in a comfortable chair and have the table lined up to the bottom of your elbows so that everything is perfectly lined up. You don't want a table that's too high, causing you to lift up your shoulders and your arms and crimping up your neck, but you also don't want it lower and where you're having to hunch over. The next thing I want to talk about, I just touched on, but it's creating a space that works for you. Again, having a table that's comfortable. It doesn't need to be big, although that's lovely to have. It just needs to be at the right height. If you do a lot of standing, consider getting an anti-fatigue mat. I am only 54, but I am finding little glimpses of things into my future, one of them being plantar fasciitis, which is pretty uncomfortable. I've been getting a couple of those anti-fatigue mats and scattering them around in places that I stand for extended amount of times, and it makes such a difference. I've also made sure to get different inserts in my shoes for when I'm standing or walking on an extended amount of time, and once again, that also makes a really big difference for the insole of my shoes as well as that extra cushion. Now, what kind of video would this be if I didn't talk about organizing? Organizing plays a big part if you are struggling with any type of joint or muscle issues. You want to make sure that once you're getting to a discomfort level, that you reorganize so that things are in line for what's comfortable with you. I worked with this gal once, and she and her husband were both elderly. They both had back issues, and they both had a restriction on how high they could reach. Their kids were very sweet to come over and help them organize in their kitchen, and it wasn't a thought process of their parents' limited capabilities. They put all of the crock pots, rice cookers, toaster ovens up on top shelves. They were thinking their parents could just climb up on a step stool and get them down, but that's not safe, and that was very difficult for them to still reach up. So you want to make sure that you reorganize so that the things that are a little bit heavier are waist height. You want to make sure you're not having to bend over and pick up something heavy and lift up. And conversely, you want to make sure you're not putting anything over your head. If you do have to use those upper areas, make sure they are super light things. And you can get one of those grabbers from Amazon or Target or a medical store. They're usually pretty inexpensive. I've seen them at the dollar store. I don't recommend those. The grip on them is just not sufficient to actually grab something. But the ones that you would get through a medical supply store or Amazon have a good grip on it, and it's actually sturdy enough that you can grab something that's maybe up to a pound and carry it over to you. Another thing I want to talk about is you need to make sure the storage supplies you're using are getting smaller. As much as I love the idea of having big shelves with big bins so that you can get a lot of storage in there and label it easily, if you're having any type of issue with mobility, those big totes would just not be manageable. We need to scale down the size of those and keep them small. Whenever possible, keep them clear so it's easier for you to see what's inside of them, and I always recommend labeling. Another thing that's really helpful if you can is to get down into smaller bins that have the drawers that you can just have each individual item in. This is definitely more for crafting or for any type of hobby that you're doing. You really want that easy access, and you want something that doesn't have a small knob on it, something that's easy to just grab and pull out. Now, I know this one's going to seem simple, but oftentimes even I am guilty of wanting to do it the hard way. I had a boss that used to say whenever I was struggling with something, Nor, wait, there's a harder way to do that. And I would have to laugh, realizing, yes, I'm trying to be efficient and I'm trying to do it all instead of going a faster, easier route that would yield the same results. What do I mean? If you're making gift cards, you don't need to get the full sheets of paper and cut them down and score the card and fold the card. Buy pre-made cards. You can still embellish and decorate them just the same way, and the recipient will be none the wiser that you bought that plain white card versus making that plain white card. The same goes with pie crust or a base quilt that you're just going to add all of the embellishments on. I've even cheated before and had a cake made that was just frosted plain white, and then I had all of the joy of decorating it. It was probably better that way because I'm not a cook, so the cake tasted good. But if you can find a shortcut to still enjoy the process part that you like, but not have to do the hard work getting to that point, allow that part to be easier. Now, I think this next one is applicable whether you have something that's limiting what you enjoy doing or not, and that is know your body. If you're doing something and you start to feel a little bit sore, listen to your body and take frequent breaks. Drink that water, set that timer. Don't allow yourself to push through and get to the point where you have overdone it so much that now you're in a flare-up and you won't be able to do anything for a couple of days. I've done this. Leave me a comment below if you've ever pushed through and then put yourself in a situation of being knocked out for a couple of days. Know your body, listen to your body, and be kind to it. This last one's going to be difficult to hear, but I think it's important to address that you might get to a point in your limitations where you can't do what you enjoyed. And I just want you to know that that's okay to seek out a new hobby and discover something new that you might enjoy that fits in with what your current abilities are. I know it's hard to give something up, but it's important to always have that creative outlet. And while you may have to let something go, finding something else that will spark that fire in you will give you a new joy you may not otherwise have been able to discover. Some of the best tips I get are from you. If I missed something in here or you have a great suggestion, please leave it in the comments below. I know so many of you comment that you have learned amazing things reading through the comments of other viewers, so I welcome all of your suggestions, feedback, and tips. I'm also keeping some of those little tidbits, so if I send you a message asking if I can use it, it's because I'm working on a compilation of all of your amazing ideas. You guys are a wealth of information, so I can't wait to share all of your great tips and tricks in a future video. If you do like this video, please make sure to click that subscribe button. I am getting closer. I'm aiming for 100,000 subscribers. I thought I was going to hit it by the end of the year, but I actually might hit it by this summer, which is crazy. Once I hit 100,000 subscribers, YouTube gives me this play button, which is trivial and silly, but I really want to earn it. So you clicking that button will help me closer to that goal, and I'll be so excited to celebrate with you when we hit that. I also want to take a quick second to thank my patrons. Their support is allowing to make these videos. It's also inching me closer to another goal I have of mine, which is getting an RV, hopping in that RV and driving around the United States and Canada to help you get organized. If you're interested in that, that information is in the description below, as well as all of the products I discussed today. Those are all through my Amazon, and I do have that as an affiliate link, which means that I get a couple of pennies when you click on that. The cost is exactly the same for you, but it does once again help support my channel. Thank you so much for watching today. I can't wait to read all of your comments, and I will see you in just a few days. Bye.